everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining this critical discussion on leveraging the voluntary carbon market to mitigate methane emissions. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas that has a far greater impact on global warming than carbon dioxide in the short term. While it accounts for a smaller proportion of overall emissions, it has an outsized effect on climate change with a global warming potential more than 80 times higher than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. Addressing methane emissions, particularly for sectors like agriculture and oil and gas, is essential to achieving our climate goals, as reducing these emissions can yield near-term benefits to both the environment and human health. A promising pathway to curbing methane emissions lies within the voluntary carbon market, an evolving framework where organizations, governments, and individuals can invest in projects designed to reduce or remove carbon, and in this case, methane emissions from the atmosphere. The VCM provides an opportunity to incentivize the reduction of methane leaks, the capture of methane from waste sources, and the improvement of agricultural practices. In this panel, you'll hear from a range of experts that represent high-quality, high-impact methane abatement projects like food recovery, plugging orphaned oil and gas wells, and permafrost methane flaring. As we look to scale solutions, our panels will dive into the challenges and opportunities that come with integrating methane prevention projects into the voluntary carbon market, offering a holistic view of how we can collectively work towards a more sustainable and climate resilient future. Thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to engaging discussions ahead. Let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce myself and allow our panelists to introduce themselves. My name is Hope Pagan Ramos. I'm the managing editor of Carbon for the Americas at Quantum Commodity Intelligence. My background lies in sustainable agricultural development, and I have several years of experience as a market reporter and pricing analyst for renewable natural gas, certified lower emissions natural gas, and most recently, the voluntary carbon market. I'm super excited to be moderating this critical discussion, and next I'd like to introduce Olia.
Hi, my name is Olia. I'm the CEO of Frost Methane. I've been working in climate for 12 years, previously in Google and Google X and mini-grid development in sub-Saharan Africa. And Frost Methane works on reducing methane from sources such as manure ponds in livestock, right, that produce a lot of methane. Basically, the manure goes into the pit, and then it stays there until it is time to put it on the field as fertilizer. And during the time that it is in the pit, it decomposes and produces methane. So this is kind of our main area where we do, but we also have done shutdown coal mines and permafrost, as Hope mentioned at the beginning.
Amazing. Welcome and thank you for being here. Jules, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so it's great to meet everyone. Hi, my name is Jules Fogarty. I've been working in the voluntary carbon market for the past 4 years, primarily in food waste. I fell in love with this space while studying carbon markets, as well as the inefficiencies of the food system during my time at the University of California, Berkeley. Over the past 2 years, I've worked at Brightly as a data analyst. Brightly is a startup that helps food banks both measure methane impact and secure sustainability financing for them. And my work is essentially to take the data from these food banks and align them with Verra's new food waste and loss methodology. All of it is essentially ensure that we're conducting proper reporting and verification, or MRV, as I'm sure many of you know the acronyms. So how does reducing food waste address methane emissions? A EPA study from 2023 showed that approximately 60% of the methane emissions coming from landfills in the US come from food waste. This contributes to worldwide food waste and loss accounts for roughly 8 to 10% of annual GHG emissions. So huge issue. And this is no secret, everyone from companies to government agencies are really trying to find their solutions behind this, but Brightly believes food banks are perfectly positioned to fight this climate crisis while supporting underserved communities in their local neighborhoods. So yeah, that's a bit about me and Brightly. I'm excited to bring my experience as a food waste expert and project developer to this panel. And thank you for having me.
Awesome, thank you. And then finally, Jenny.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Morgan. I work at Tradewater, and I'm just really thrilled that we'll be talking about methane, and I'm here alongside such distinguished experts. My journey into climate began in the tech industry, and I actually heard about Tradewater through a podcast. I was really excited to hear more about some of the projects that Tradewater was bringing forth to the market. And after doing some due diligence and understanding the scalability and quality of the work, I knew I wanted to be a part of something bigger. So now, 3 years later almost, I've had the privilege of working with Tradewater and my colleagues where we're tackling some of the most potent greenhouse gases and helping prevent them from being leaked into the atmosphere. We're most well known for our destruction of halocarbons, specifically refrigerants and halons. And then we also specialize in plugging orphaned oil and gas wells across the United States, which is primarily what I'm going to be talking about today. These wells, there's abandoned and orphaned wells. There's about 3 million of them in total in the United States, and they're leaking massive quantities of methane. And until now, no one is really being held accountable to plug these since they aren't owned and operated by a solvent business owner. And so we're really passionate about supporting these high quality, impactful methane projects. Our work directly contributes to not only preventing these gases from leaking into the atmosphere, but also protecting our soil, water, and air, which has huge implications on public health. So I'm really excited about partnering alongside all of you. I think highlighting methane as an important climate solution is something that we should all be talking about and talking about more. And also just focusing on how the voluntary carbon market can help fulfill such a crucial need and provide financing and scalability to a solution that we all know is something we should be focusing our efforts. So thanks for having me, and I'm excited for the discussion.
Awesome. Well, welcome to all the panelists, and thank you for being here. So that sets the stage a little bit for why methane abatement is kind of special to our hearts and our organizations. But I'll just start it out with asking, why do sustainability leaders and organizations across the world utilize the carbon markets to support methane abatement? And I'll pass this one to Jenny to start.
Yeah, I think that question is somewhat two-pronged. And the first being just why methane? Methane is one of the fastest and most effective ways that we can curb climate change. And the IPCC is one that, among many experts, that's really driving that point home. But methane traps heat at a rate that's over 80 times higher over the course of 20 years, higher than carbon. And so it warms the planet quite quickly. And even though it has a shorter lifespan than CO2, because we're in such a critical time, reducing the amount of methane that's being emitted is going to help buy us that time that's needed. And then I also alluded to this in the introduction, but it's not only a contributor to global warming, but it also has negative implications on health just due to it being in the air and reducing the quality of our soil and water. It's also inefficient. Like these types of leaks, it's something that we could be utilizing to, power homes and fuel industries. And so if we're having these leaks, then we're not really being the most effective. So there's a lot of reasons why methane is one that a lot of experts are targeting specifically. And then the second prong or piece of the question is why the carbon market? And really the carbon market, I'm a huge proponent of both the compliance and voluntary market, just simply because it bridges a gap between regulation and decarbonization. So as we wait for regulatory bodies to progress at whatever time period that they would like, we need to ensure that we're preventing these methane emissions from going into the atmosphere. And so the voluntary carbon market provides that bridge between that gap. And so rather than wait, we can actually take action today. And I really love the solutions that are being highlighted today because they're actions that happen today that have positive climate impact today. And I think that that's something that not only is crucial based on the time we're living in, but it's also something that's really exciting to celebrate. It's not a hope and wait. It's something that is actually high quality and transparent and can be measured. So that's why a lot of our partners and leaders in climate are utilizing the VCM as a tool to do just that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that provides a great overview of kind of why these investments are being made into this space and how critical it is for reducing emissions and for public health in general. I know we spoke and touched on a couple of the methane abatement projects that you all are involved in, but I'd just like to kind of open it up to what other types of methane projects exist today, and then what are kind of the notable discrepancies between them, whether that be regarding pricing of credits, the quality of projects and offsets, and the co-benefits associated with them. And I'll pass this one to Jules to start.
So just want to start off by saying there are many brilliant projects in the methane space, and by simplifying them, I'm probably doing a lot of them, like Olia's projects, a disservice, but I'm going to attempt to do my best. So there appears to be kind of two major categories, at least when buyers are kind of looking at these methane projects, with industrial projects and kind of agricultural projects. So maybe start on the industrial side. You have a lot of kind of landfill gas or LFG projects that cap and flare methane. Essentially, methane's coming out of these landfills. They flare that, turn that into CO2. And as we've stated, that has a much lower impact than the original methane. Within the industrial space, there's lots of these kinds of projects. So you see similar work with kind of mining, oil and gas, and kind of other industrial sectors. And again, I want to stress I'm way oversimplifying. You know, some of these projects might deal with methane leaks in other ways, or might be using filters or some other kind of equipment. But what I think is most important is wherever there are industrial sources of methane, there are opportunities for projects. And I think that's what we've been seeing a lot of innovation and kind of opportunity coming out in. On the other side, there's kind of agriculture related projects. So some of you this week might have seen a cow wearing a backpack that's collecting its methane emissions. That was kind of a fun photo going around. That's a great example of innovation in this space. You know, livestock methane capture and destruction is probably the most well-known type, but you're seeing fantastic innovation across the space, from rice paddy methane becoming kind of a more and more popular project type to Olia's work with manure and kind of the promises that can have with massive impacts if that technology is properly scaled. So I think with these agricultural projects, what you see is maybe the price can be a little bit higher than most of these industrial projects, and often come with kind of more marketable co-benefits, especially if your company kind of interacts in that food and ag space, which many do. With that said, though, I know I sound like a broken record. Each project is different, so it's really important to kind of understand that when you're looking at Brightly's project, it doesn't neatly fall into one of these categories, and I think many methane projects, when you really dig into it, don't. At the end of the day, I think assessing pricing, quality, co-benefits on project type alone can be really difficult. It's important to consider like other qualities such as accreditation, ratings, and probably most importantly, project specific documents to really understand that project that you're looking to invest in. So yeah, broadly speaking, they're industrial agriculture projects, but that really oversimplifies discrepancies you really find within the methane market. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that thoughtful overview. That definitely provides a great kind of insight into what are the projects that we have today and kind of the I would say, broader trend within the voluntary carbon market, particularly amongst buyers, that project specificity really matters when they're looking to invest. And kind of on that note, what should buyers be looking for in methane credits? And I'll pass this one to Olia.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that much like other credit types, right? People are looking for things like permanence, which, to make sure that once that methane is destroyed or plugged, that it stays in the ground or stays destroyed. So for methane, of course, that's a lot easier than stash type of carbon offset projects. You want to be really looking at how these things are measured. And this is not to say that if things are, the reductions are modeled rather than measured, that they're not good, but it's worth going into the details. So, for example, like for project types that we deal with, if we have a data gap in our sensors, what happens then, right? Normally we have to take samples every 15 minutes. what happens if we have a data gap? How is that treated, right? Are there any kind of assumptions around the efficacy of our device? And then, of course, looking at either other social co-benefits or co-harms from the project, right? So I think in our cases, I think we all have very strong co-benefits for our projects, but this is something that we're measuring quite a bit. And sometimes these are not things that you can get monetary value for, right? As Jenny was saying, if there's a health benefit, that's not something we get paid for. We get paid strictly for the GHG reduction, right? So in our case, there's a water benefit and a fertilizer benefit, and those are things that are may get captured. Eventually makes us feel happier, at least. And so the other thing to look at is, of course, price, right? I think people have limited internal political capital in their organizations and willingness to pay. And so I think that's always really important. But when you start reading the particular protocol, as you get kind of interested in that, I always think of this of we're frost methane. Imagine there's an evil frost methane. Do you feel that the auditing is sufficient to tell the difference between frost methane and evil frost methane? And if it doesn't, what else do you want, right? Because there's things we literally have put webcams on our projects at times, obviously with the permission of the landowner, to be as an additional proof point. So I think that it's kind of a really fun way to think about it. And I'd say, as you're thinking about buying these credits, especially if your company is new to this, definitely I'm available, and I'm sure the same is probably true for my co-experts, that we're happy to chat about that, about what you should be thinking about for your specific methane methodology, even if it's not ours, because we all feel very strongly about methane, promoting the whole non-CO2 gas projects, especially given how cost effective they are.
Awesome. Thank you, Olia. That is a great answer to kind of what buyers are looking for. And something else that has been really key in the voluntary carbon market is integrity and kind of trust in these offsets and protocols. And so there's been a lot of initiatives like the ICVCM CCP labels. We have a lot of emerging carbon rating agencies, but what are the key things that projects are looking for to evaluate a high quality project, or what does that mean to buyers?
Definitely, yeah, I can take this one. So it's a really great question. How do buyers think about high quality credits? So before my time at Brightly, I was working at a food bank that was lucky enough to partner with McKinsey on kind of building out knowledge in the carbon market. And they identified two qualities buyers really cared about. These kind of sound very simple: marketability and legitimacy. And kind of through my personal experience, while there are people at these organizations who care about sustainability, the organizations themselves aren't making these sustainability decisions for climate reasons. They're making them primarily for other reasons. So we can kind of get into that, but really what's important is you have to speak their language. What do they want? And that's how they evaluate a high quality credit. So if you're working with kind of a large enterprise, just to show stakeholders that their project's actually achieving what it claims, it is really important to get ratings, standards, labels. These are really important because of the legitimacy they provide, but also because of kind of the convenience they provide. These labels provide a really convenient way for these kind of large companies to legitimately make a sustainability claim. I think at the end of the day, these enterprises, they're going to be considering a lot of projects, and they don't want to spend too much time on your project, and definitely not time defending your project. So making that legitimacy really convenient, I think, has been key to showing what a high quality credit is. There's also, on the other side with kind of small, medium businesses, maybe the stakeholder, fulfilling kind of the stakeholders' wants isn't as important, but the marketability is much more important for them. So, a random acronym label might not mean much, but they really want to know kind of that story behind that methane project. What were the co-benefits? And within these, and as Olia kind of brought up earlier, these things that might not necessarily be valuable to a large enterprise, such as community impact or water usage, might become much more valuable and might be seen as a much higher quality credit for these more marketing focused small, medium businesses. So again, probably way oversimplified the market there, but you're really seeing kind of buyers primarily value legitimacy and marketability, and it really comes down to the buyer and kind of speaking their language when they're determining what a high quality credit is. So.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jules. I think that kind of story that you tell as a project developer along with your project is super key for getting that investment from buyers. Moving on to kind of what are the biggest trends that we're seeing in the methane credit market in the voluntary carbon space over the past year or so?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think I'll be somewhat reiterating some of the things that my colleagues have stated thus far, of just really focusing a lot more on transparency and accuracy. And as Jules talked about, all of the various labels that are starting to come out to make that process more transparent and easier for prospective buyers. I do also see there being somewhat of a balance, because the ICVCM is going through all of these various methodologies, and that's taking time, and they're doing it in a very systematic and organized fashion. And so while there are project developers that are really excited about the opportunity of getting this label assigned to, you know, their project or their expertise, there is a delay in this process, especially if there's been a project that's come out before or after the review process has begun. It will then be delayed until they are done with all the other methodologies that they have. And so I would say that with transparency and accuracy being a trend, I would also say that there's a trend that the knowledgeable and motivated buyer is very attuned to trying to partner with project developers that are willing to take the time to provide that transparency and accuracy on their own as well. So I'm kind of speaking out of two sides of my mouth. But I think it is really important to be very transparent about the fact that there is a body that is reviewing all of these methodologies, and that takes time, but we don't have time to waste. And with methane being a project and a project type and a greenhouse gas that has such benefit if we tackle it today, it seems somewhat counterintuitive to be waiting for a label to then address a greenhouse gas that wreaks havoc immediately. And so it's really finding this balance. And so if there is a buyer that is very motivated to tackle methane and wants to work on a project type that they feel confident about, they should work with that project developer and get as close to the project as they can with the resources that they have, meaning maybe a site visit is an opportunity, maybe understanding all of the different measurements that go into place that Olya alluded to, and just really understanding how the benefit is quantified. And again, a lot of those benefits are not quantified. And so knowing the project developer, even though that does take time, as we all know, every relationship that actually has positive benefits are the ones that we put time into. And so I'm seeing that as a trend. Like I actually don't see buyers, and this is just my personal experience, but I don't really see buyers blindly going off of accreditations. I view those as being like a stamp of approval and just like a breath of relief. But at the same time, I see buyers really wanting to understand who their partner is, what this project is, really feeling proud of the fact that they're being strategic in how they're partnering and how they're addressing climate. I think also those knowledgeable buyers are not only excited about meeting their climate targets based on, you know, how it presents for their business, but then a lot of savvy leaders are understanding that if you have a climate action in place, you are also protecting your business. So by addressing climate risk, you're addressing business risk. And so I'm seeing really knowledgeable, excited, enthusiastic buyers wanting to dig into the details and work with partners that are willing to do that. So that's been a big trend that I've seen.
Thanks, Jenny. That's super insightful into kind of that these labels are important for the market, but not necessarily the end all be all for a project, and getting that kind of relationship with the buyer is super key and critical. I would just like to ask, how can these organizations that are investing in this space, can they prioritize methane in their sustainability strategies, and how can they effectively communicate this strategy to stakeholders? And I think, Jenny, if you could start on this one, that would be amazing.
Yeah. I think that organizations are prioritizing strategies because they want to make sure they can feel confident. And I guess I'm the two-sided mouth person today, but I do want to stress that the ICVCM is going through methodologies, not projects. And so that's a clear distinction as well. There might be something about the methodology that the ICVCM is acknowledging as something that is saying it represents these core principles that we need to uphold and these standards that we need to uphold. And then there might be things about a methodology that might be something that needs to be evolving and be further iterated on. But again, that doesn't mean that the project developer hasn't gone through specific steps to accommodate whatever is being positioned as, could be improved upon. And so, again, I am a big believer in the voluntary carbon market because I think it satisfies everyone's desires. And I think that that's the way that we can be the most successful, is by meeting everyone where they are and meeting in the middle. And so I just would stress that I hope that organizations will continue to align their strategies with not only methodologies that they feel confident in, but also with project developers that they feel confident in. And then being able to communicate that effectively is really by talking about the why. Why did I prioritize this project? What got me excited about it? What is aligning to our business and our industry? What did I find really special and unique about this project developer? That arms you with the built-in confidence to speak eloquently about what your strategy is and why you're making various choices. And so I think a lot of decision makers come to these decisions with a bit of fear because there is a lot of public scrutiny and a lot of urgency. And so that puts, a magnifying glass on a lot of the decisions that we make. But if you arm yourself effectively with the why and be able to respond to that in a really clear and concise way, the public stands behind those decisions. And so I would just stress that you really know, and the project developer you partner with should be more than happy to provide all of those whys for you. So it's important to not come across as perfect. It's important to come across as confident so that you can build trust and you're demonstrating progress and movement towards where we want to be, which is in a safe, secure, thriving planet, economy, society. So that would be what I would say if you're going to communicate your climate strategy effectively. Really lean into the details.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, and I would probably say this during every webinar on carbon, but I think letting the perfection not be the enemy of the good is super critical for these markets, and kind of getting this importance of reducing methane emissions to the broader public. I think Jules has said it very clearly, that it's very easy the risk of oversimplifying in this kind of space. So I'd like to take the time to ask each of you kind of what are some of the nuances of the methane projects that you guys are representing, and can you guys share something unique about your project that you're proud of?
Yeah, I can start us off. So something unique about Brightly is we work with just a massive difference in partner scale. We work with mom and pop food banks that rescue just over a couple thousand pounds a year, all the way to multi-state organizations responsible for rescuing hundreds of millions of pounds. So we get wildly different data sets, from really, really nice to kind of hand-drawn photocopied receipts. And what I'm really proud of is that the Brightly team has been able to create a platform that can ingest this wide range of data. I think with a lot of carbon projects, it's, oftentimes funding goes to larger projects where a lot of the auditing or a lot of the project just makes sense financially. But my hope is that, as these projects continue to evolve and as innovation continues to come into the space, smaller and smaller partners can take credit for the sustainability impact they're having.
I think similarly on the equity side, sort of one thing that we've been hearing from farmers was that the very, very large, like the mega farms, they put in biodigesters and they can take advantage of the LCFS credits, the RIN credits, and the ITC, right? And so these farms that are not even small, they're like medium to large farms, are kind of being left out, right? And so there's kind of this like huge push to consolidation, and there's like quite a bit of inequity, as Jules was saying, about the kind of large versus small organizations. And so we work specifically with those that are kind of below the biodigester size, which is still the vast majority of methane emissions from these sources, in order to be able to get them to participate in this economy as well. The other thing that was pretty cool was we've worked really, really hard to make sure that this isn't a pain in the ass for the farmer. So we have seen some attempts at these projects before, and the farmer had to be out there every day with like a broom with a t-shirt on fire, like trying to relight this thing as it continuously blown out. And so that was something that we took very much to heart when we were designing our technology, is to basically say, look, this is not doing anybody any favors if there's a little bit of additional income, but it just sucks up all of their time, right? And so we're really proud of both the kind of co-benefits that there are for our projects to begin with, and the fact that we've really listened to the farmers and their concerns and are not accidentally imparting a bunch of harms on the people that kind of we're working with. So that was kind of a really big part of our technology design, and we definitely took the extra time to make sure that things were extremely reliable in that way.
Thank you, Olya. And then Jenny, if you want to finish this off.
Yeah, I would love to show those conversations more, because I think, Olya, you alluding to like this close relationship that you're developing with your partners, I think that is exactly what it means to be a quality project developer, is that relationship building. Jules, you're talking about these small mom and pop written on the back of a receipt type of relationships. And like, that's what makes a quality project developer. It's not just, it's not like you just go into a room and then you're able to do something and then you sell it. There's so much relationship building that goes behind these projects that is not usually at the forefront of, what we're talking about. And so I think the relationship piece is not only a nuance about Tradewater's work, but it sounds like very much so a nuance on, just methane abatement work in general. I know I talked about the public health implications of methane leaks, as well as, the warming implications that happen if we continue to allow methane to emit at the scale it's emitting today. But I also like to talk about the economic value that these types of projects provide. When you have a leaking orphaned oil and gas well on your property and you are a private landowner, which is typically who we are working with, that lowers the economic value of your land. And so not only do you have a gaping hole on your property, and that's also, causing a lot of negative consequences, it's also lowering the value of your property. And so by plugging these, not only are we doing all of these various climate and public health care and public service types of work, but then we're also helping the landowner restore their land back to its rightful state, and giving them back the asset that they deserve and the asset that they were hoping to provide for their families, and, continue to do whatever they're doing for their community, whether they're farming on it or whatever they're doing. But that's a really exciting distinction about the plugging of orphaned wells too, is it's really got a holistic level of impact built behind it. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, it's super interesting to hear about all of your guys' unique projects and how they're kind of working to reduce methane in this space. Before we address questions from the audience, I just wanted to ask each of the panelists what you want audience members to leave with today. Kind of what is the key takeaway that you would give to them? And I will pass it to Jules to start.
Yeah. So I've been saying this the whole webinar, but each project really is different. This space is so novel with like so much innovation that you'd be doing yourself and your organization a disservice if you try to categorize these too broadly. So really, when kind of working with projects, like we've all been saying, really try to understand the specific details of those projects. And the more you can understand that, the more you can dig into that, the better understanding you'll have of the methane market. So.
Awesome. Olya?
Yeah, I think to really consider methane project as part of your portfolio, right? We talked to a lot of buyers that sometimes consider strictly CO2, and methane is 20, well, depending how you count, let's call it 20% of the warming problem, and so it seems very, and has all of these health issues that Jenny was mentioning, and so it seems like it will make sense for that to be a significant portion of a portfolio when folks are considering that, based on all of the things that we've mentioned around the, how great you can measure them, the co-benefits, the additionality, the permanence of these projects. So I would say make sure to consider that as part of the overall portfolio that I think a lot of people on the call are probably building.
Great. And then I'll have Jenny finish this off.
Yeah, I think I'm going to somewhat echo what my co-panelists are stating, is that if you had all your stock in one business, a financial advisor would tell you that you should diversify your portfolio. And I say the same about climate impact. Not one solution is going to, save us all. And that sounds a bit doomsday, but it's more about being really strategic and smart about the way that you're putting your holistic strategy together. And so, some of the partners that I really admire that I've had the pleasure of working with have, 6 projects that they have done their due diligence, and they're really proud to partner. And sometimes they swap things out every once in a while, or they're doing multi-year agreements to really ensure that their investments are scalable and that they're able to measure the amount of impact that they're putting, behind their dollar. So I would just, reiterate the strategic way that you're looking at how you are engaging in climate action. And so, and I think it's very clear that all of the panelists are very knowledgeable about that. And I speak for all of us that we would be more than happy to speak with you after if you have any questions about your decarbonization strategy or the voluntary carbon market, or introduce you to others that can help you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. And thank you to our esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable insights today. The conversation around methane emissions and the role of the VCM is crucial to shaping our collective path in combating climate change. As we conclude this discussion, we now want to open up the floor to you, our audience. Your questions, thoughts, and perspectives are crucial for deepening this conversation and ensuring we're addressing the challenges and opportunities that matter most. Please feel free to send any of your questions in the chat, whether about specific methane reduction strategies, the future of the carbon market, or how we can contribute to a cleaner, more sustainable future. I think we had one from during the panel. So we have, has natural methane from wetlands and other natural sources been quantified? I'll open that up to all 3 panelists.
Yes, with some error bars, right? But essentially, yes, there's been a lot of covariance towers that have been measuring both how much methane and also at what times of the year does it come out, right? Because it can go either way. And then the satellites that have been up there that are doing kind of larger areas have also been quite good at measuring the amount of methane from those. Everything has error bars, but those are pretty good.
Yeah, and I think my colleague sent me a few ACR, the American Carbon Registry, has a few active wetland methodologies that you can review. And it looks like there's a few projects that are listed there, but that might help with some of the various mathematics that goes behind measuring and quantifying.
Hope, I think you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a question for you guys as more questions come in. But how do you see kind of the incoming Trump administration impacting the methane abatement space or the voluntary carbon market writ large?
I can take a stab at that. So I think there's definitely going to be impacts in the ESG space and the carbon markets. Like, there's no doubt about that. Luckily, compared to maybe if this was more compliance focused, a lot of the demand is being driven by consumers, by kind of corporations. So, you're still going to see a lot of demand for carbon neutral or net zero products out there. So while I'm an eternal optimist, so while I still feel quite optimistic about this market and that consumer demand is still going to drive this market to hopefully where it needs to go, I can't deny that there won't be impacts from the current administration that'll impact the space.
Thanks, Jules.
Yeah, I think pretty similar. So we work in the California cap and trade compliance market, which is state rather than federal. And then on the voluntary kind of offsets, insets, we've been seeing a lot of stuff. But the global methane pledge is something we haven't touched on from a policy standpoint, but that is a lot of countries that have committed to very significant methane reductions by 2030. And whether they internally will be using VCM or other policy drivers kind of remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, the mitigation is still the stuff that we're all doing. And so I think there is a lot of thinking among the developers to be like, well, is it like the US? And there's other countries, of course, out there that are very committed to the methane reductions. So you sort of look at both things, but I agree with Jules that this isn't the federal compliance thing. It is voluntary and, in our case, state compliance that we've been working with. But things are changing in an unpredictable way. So if I had that crystal ball, oof.
Yes, I think that's a fair statement. Thanks, Ilya. Jenny, any inputs, or should we wait for another question to roll in?
I mean, I talked about bridging a gap. The gap just got a little wider. And so we need everybody to come together and continue to protect what I believe strongly we all want to protect. We all just communicated a little bit differently. And I think it's really important to remember what the ultimate goal is, which is safety and security for your business, for your family, for your community, for yourself, however you interpret that. And so I think the voluntary carbon market is the perfect place to be putting investments to bridge gaps that you want to address. I also agree. I don't know when this happened to me, but I too am somewhat of an optimist. And I worked really hard to get that. And I think that we operate on a pendulum. And so when the pendulum swings, I'm really excited to see industry and people step up to provide balance with said pendulum. And so I'm seeing that happen every day. And that's what makes me excited to be on panels and, be talking about this, because there is momentum and excitement. So I would encourage people to continue to operate towards the North Star and not get distracted, continue to stay focused on what the problem is at hand, which is climate change and various forms of equity are things that we should be targeting our efforts to support.
Awesome. Thanks all the panelists for touching on that one. I think it's great to hear that there's still optimism amongst us. So that is all the questions we have for right now, but we have some time, so we'll just kind of wait and see if anything rolls in, and then maybe if there's any kind of burning thoughts that the panelists have, we can touch on those as well.
Yeah, I would suggest people say, sorry, Jules, how people can get in touch, if that would be, but also whatever Jules was about to say.
Mine was much less important, so we should go with that first.
Yeah, in my case, LinkedIn is actually quite good as far as getting in touch. And yeah, as I think both Janie and I mentioned, like we're all very passionate about the space. And I think one of the reasons that we all decided to do this, we're actually quite like, not to say impartial, obviously we're all working on our solutions, but in general, we have a lot of respect for all the really great work that lots of other solutions, both in the CO2 space and the nitrous oxide and the HFCs are doing. And so I think we're actually particularly great people to talk to about this, about the nuances as people are considering what sort of portfolios they want to be building. I think it's also really fun that I've been seeing some customers try to have the portfolio sort of match the footprint, right? So there's definitely folks that have been like, hey, we have really heavy operations in this region, so we have preferences for projects that increase the water and health kind of benefits in this region. Or like, hey, we serve food, so we want food-specific things kind of in proportion to that, or we use aviation fuel, so the oil and gas plugging is particularly important. So we've definitely seen folks try to match that up to their actual footprint, which I think is also very elegant. But yeah, just LinkedIn or olia@frostmethane.com.
Similar on our side, our website or my LinkedIn. If you are a food bank, Matt Jones, M-A-T-T Jones, is a great person to reach out to if you're a food bank. So yeah.
Cool. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Jenny Morgan, and then tradewater.us is our website that you can see some of our projects, but our projects are global, so don't let the US fool you.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then, yeah, myself as well on LinkedIn, happy to chat with anybody in the space. And then I would direct anyone who's interested to qcintel.com to see more insights into the carbon market and carbon pricing. Awesome. Well, I think this provided a really great overview of kind of the methane abatement projects that are out there, the kind of landscape of the projects, what buyers are interested in, what really is maybe not as important to buyers, as well as kind of the uniqueness of each of your guys's methane abatement projects that are having real impacts on our kind of fight against climate change. So if there aren't any more questions, I just want to thank the panelists for being here and thanking everyone in attendance for taking time out of your day to learn about something as niche but critical as methane abatement projects in the voluntary carbon market. So thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.